All right, on a cloud of love, everyone, let us welcome our next storyteller, Caroline Subtlehand.
Good God.
You're good.
My friend gave me his Apple Watch so we can track what your heart rate is like before you pass out. All right. Well, fuck. All right, does the timer start? Shit. Okay. So I spent most of 2017 trying to get out of bed. I struggle with depression, so that's not a hurdle I'm unfamiliar with. But my playbook of strategies wasn't cutting it last year. So Mrs. Harris from 5th grade science told me that every experiment has 6 parts: an introduction, a purpose, a hypothesis, procedure, observations, and a conclusion. So for some context, after I graduated from college in 2015, I went on a 40-day road trip around the U.S. with my best friend, Rachel. And towards the end of the trip, something changed, and there was all of a sudden this inexplicable tension. And the last night of the trip, when we were properly lubricated by alcohol and some souvenirs from Denver, I turned to her and I asked her, "Oh, what are you thinking?" And she said, "I just want you to kiss me." And our platonic friendship took a hard left and transitioned into something very different. And it was raw, and it was beautiful, and it was full of firsts for me. But that story isn't the one that I want to tell. This story is about the after, the transition back to friendship. And that's what the experiment was about. So the purpose of this experiment was, quite frankly, to get myself out of bed. I was at a breaking point. I was depressed and unemployed. And Rachel had found a new girlfriend, and she was thriving. And this decision to break up was at one point mutual, but I had gotten lost along the way and sort of had started to rewrite our romance, and that made it really hard to accept our new friendship. So needless to say, our friendship was hanging on by a thread, almost as thin as the one that was holding all of my shit together. And I really needed to disentangle my emotions as it related to my memory of the past and look at my emotions for what they were at the time. Because my hypothesis was that an analysis of my emotions at the time would reveal that our decision to break up was the right decision, that we should be just friends. And so my procedure, I poured over 3 years worth of journal entries. I had a line a day journal. You write a line a day for 5 years, and this is 3 years worth. And I noted any day that Rachel was mentioned or discussed. And for each of those days, I assigned 1 to 2 emotions out of a list of 56 emotions. And then on a large poster board, I made a grid of 1,096 squares to represent 1,096 days, which encompassed the 3 years that I wanted to understand, which was the transition from us falling into love and out again. And then for each of those emotions, I assigned a colored pencil, and then I color-coded those 3 years. And the first day that I started this, I couldn't stop for 6 hours. I was so engrossed in our own story because I had a data set that I was able to make observations from, like how the light yellow admiration and the blush pink delight of our college friendship years transitioned into the process red ecstasy and infatuation orange of our romantic relationship. And because we had already signed a lease to move in together before the road trip, we moved into the same place in Cambridge days after we first kissed. And so we were best friends who were in love. We did everything together. And it's part of what made it so beautiful. But it also meant that we had no space from each other, which meant we had no time to reflect on things. We were just constantly reacting. And that became so apparent to me when I saw all of the color patterns that emerged from this project I was working on. Like, how processed red, ecstasy, then, was so often paired with apple green uneasiness, which then led to lime insecurity. And then how small that lime insecurity pencil was at the end of that entire project, because after filling in all the squares, like, I was reminded how uncomfortable I was to be dating a girl at the time. And that led to me being pensive, steel gray, and discontent, Parma violet, and frustrated, light umber. And how those darkening colors then led me to do things that I shouldn't have and not do things that I should have. And and then that led to remorse, true blue, which led to guilt, peacock blue. And there it was, like, in the patterns of that entire fucking project. It was the warm colors contrasted by the cold colors the next day. I had forgotten about all of the confusion and contradiction of that time period. I was in love, but I was insecure, and I was delighted, but I was discontent. And, conclusion, that's the sixth part, right? Conclusion is, like, it took seeing that color pattern, that cycle of emotions, to remind myself why we decided to close that chapter of our lives. We were no longer helping each other become the best people we could be as girlfriends. But we are now, and Rachel's here tonight with me. And most of the colors these days are warm colors. They're light yellow, and they're yellowed orange, and they're beige. Affection, admiration, and acceptance. And we're figuring out the blue days as they come. But yeah, that's the story.